Hello YouTube, this is going to be a short series of videos that I want to use to discuss as much as I can get out of my head about what I'm classifying as my autistic traits. This video is going to be a context video, just to give you some background before I try and talk about the actual traits themselves. So I'm 52 years old. I've always kind of struggled with dealing with life to some greater or lesser extent, not in any outward way, to be fair. And I've kind of coped pretty well with life, but there's always been stuff that's not quite worked, and I've never been quite sure what. And I wasn't really until about 8 to 10 months ago when I started to piece together all the things that people were saying to me and that I was thinking in my head, and I came up with an answer, which is that I am living with autistic traits. And when I had that answer, suddenly all the bits of the jigsaw of my life made a lot more sense. So this video is going to be about a bit more about my background, and then I'll go on to something else later on. So I would have described myself as being neurotypical, and had no idea that I think any differently to anyone else that I see around me. The first time that I ever came across the concept of autistic spectrum disorder would have been probably the film Rain Man with Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman. I think that was about 88, 89. And that was the first time in public culture that people sort of discussed autism. I have since become aware that that film shows someone with savant properties as well, which isn't the same thing as autism. So the kind of the sort of card counting skills isn't really part of autistic traits. But what it did, that film, because it was so popular, was it kind of made people empathise a bit better and understand a bit better about autism. And I would say that for people of my age, I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s. There was really little understanding of autism, and it would just be misbehaviour or bad parenting might be the way you describe it. And there's very little understanding, very little sort of social communication about it, very little kind of thought about how you would deal with it if you live with it. And people who live with it would just be invisible. You wouldn't see them. So in those days, the phrase that would be used would be Asperger's syndrome, which we refer to be as a high functioning, or on the spectrum of high autistic spectrum, but being higher functioning. So there was, I think, a massive lack of understanding when I was growing up, a lack of knowledge, and I think that has increased. That knowledge has increased in the 2000s, and there is more of an understanding. If you say it now, most people have some idea what autism is. Not everyone has a lot of idea, but it's not some completely unknown concept now. I've got 3 brilliant children. My eldest daughter was diagnosed with high function autism when she was about, I'm going to say 8. My memory's not the greatest. And that was a real struggle, because really we felt that autistic diagnosis for girls was not really as advanced as it is for boys, and also trying to diagnose a high functioning girl is more difficult than a lower functioning autistic person. I think girls tend to be better at doing something like I think it's called masking, sort of blending into the society and sort of being part of what is expected of them. I'm not trying to be sexist here, I'm just thinking that's why it's harder for young girls to be diagnosed, or was at least in the past, in the sort of early 2000s when we were doing this. My youngest daughter is also very autistic in terms of higher functioning autism. They're both very clever. They're both high functioning in many respects. But unfortunately, for a variety of reasons that I won't go into, we haven't managed to get a diagnosis for our younger daughter, which has made life quite difficult for her, among many other reasons. But I just mention that because there is a genetic component to autism, and if my children have got diagnosed autism, then it's highly likely that I've got some form of that as well. I wanted to really try and get to a point where I could share clearly my my autistic traits through my YouTube channel, primarily because I think it's something that is so hidden in society and so hard to understand if you don't live with it. And even if you do live with it, it's hard to understand, I think. That I'm hoping that there are people out there that if any of this I'm going to say to you sort of rings true for you, then I'm very happy for you to reach out through the comments and sort of inquire about anything else that I've not been clear about, or ask questions, or just think about your own way of thinking, because maybe you've never thought about it in those terms, or maybe you know someone that you think this relates to. And I just think my principle is openness and honesty and transparency is always a good thing. And I'm at an age now where I've lived most of my life, and I can't go back and make different decisions based on this knowledge. But let's say you're in your early 20s now, and you suddenly start thinking about the way your brain works in these terms, and maybe you can make different decisions that mean you get a happier life than you would otherwise get. So really, this is a series of videos which are for other people as well as myself. I find since getting an understanding, my life is so much easier now, and I kind of can, when I have problems, I know whether that problem is because of my internal makeup or something external that I can't do anything about. And if it's to do with my internal makeup, the way my mind works, I have strategies to deal with it. So I hope in the next couple of videos to explain that more clearly. Before I go on to the next videos, I do want to say I found trying to put what I want to say down like out loud very difficult. And I've tried writing a script, I've tried practicing, I've tried making a few notes, and I just can't work that way. So I'm just going to have to try and do a couple of videos where I try and get it all out. I'm going to miss stuff, I'm going to misexplain stuff, but I'm going to just hope there's a bit of goodwill out there and that you take the context of these videos in its entirety, and I hope this has tried to explain what I'm trying to achieve. I'm not even convinced I've done that well in this video, but I could be here for years trying to hone down these videos. So I think that'll be enough for now. That's an introduction to what I'm about to talk about. Thank you for listening.